Welcome, everyone. Today we're talking about energy analytics and the importance of customer service. And we have Peter Quinsey here from Lowfoot. He's the CEO of Lowfoot. And Peter, would you mind giving us a little brief introduction about yourself?
Absolutely. Like I said, my name is Peter Quinsey, and I'm CEO of Lowfoot, and we help energy utilities and energy retailers get better value out of their energy data they have on hand.
So, and can you, can you explain a little bit more about Lowfoot and how you got started there?
Yeah, of course. So we're a software company, and what we do is we work with energy data. So that's data from smart meters, electric, gas, water, and also now increasingly electric and other monitoring devices. And what we do is we do a couple of things with those. First of all, we take that data and we transform it into something that's useful and actionable for our utility and energy retail clients. But the other thing we do is we take that data and we transform it into something understandable and accessible for their customers. So we take that data, we use data analytics to create a more positive customer experience.
Cool. And so how do you do that? Is it with dashboards and things like that? Or
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, it's about really communicating important information to the customer. So we do that in a few different ways. I mean, we started out in 2009, really just pulling smart meter readings and sending users a little daily message saying like, "Here's what you used. Here's what you used." And since then, we do a lot more now.
Okay.
We have an amazing development team. Some of the stuff that they've built really just blows my mind. But we can do things like we can tell you what your bill is going to be next month, for example, based on your trends, but based on the weather. And a lot of that is like AI, machine learning modeling. We can also track your usage and consumption against a budget, and tell you like, hey, you're projected to be over your budget this month, and like here's why. We also do like a lot of work with what's called demand response, which is where you ask customers to reduce at a certain time to help the grid, or even better, you connect their smart thermostat and adjust it automatically. And then lately as well, we've really been getting into adding specialized support for people with solar or battery storage or electric vehicles. But really fundamentally, it comes down to using the data that these devices and meters provide us to really provide that experience for the customer and help them understand what they're using, why, and why that changes.
what about the energy retailers and utilities? How do you help them improve their customer experience?
That's a good question. We have basically a set of back office analytics. We push those, and we have kind of client facing products as well. But it's one challenge is that the utilities have a lot of work on their plate. We're in the middle of a really significant energy transition right now. I mentioned solar and battery storage, electric vehicles. We're really moving from kind of monolithic, large fossil fuel generation to smaller, more distributed, generally renewable sources of generation, and that's really changing how we both consume and generate energy. So the utilities, who are often underfunded, have a lot of work to do to kind of get this transition moving along, and so that's where we come in. So we do a lot of work to make that easier for the utilities. So a lot of what we do is making sure that it's the utilities themselves that have a good customer experience on their end for their actual utility users. And we're entirely software as a service, all cloud based, and we do a lot of work to make sure that like their IT departments don't have to do extra work. But we can do a lot of really neat things with that data and help out our utility clients.
What are some of the key metrics that energy analytics can track to enhance the customer experience?
That's a great question. Because there's so much data out there that you really want to be careful about and intentional about what you're looking at and what you're measuring. I think one of the biggest ones for us, for our customer-facing piece, is cost, right? Because that is what gets people's attention. They want to know, how much am I spending? How much am I going to be spending, right? Okay, someone's telling me to make a change. Someone's telling me to put solar in. How much is that going to save me? Like, what is the difference going to be? And then what does my spending pattern look like after I've made these changes? What kind of changes do I need to make? So tracking cost and being able to do that and kind of run those scenarios is a really powerful tool. We also, another metric is just efficiency, right? Like, are you reducing usage, or are you using usage more strategically? That often aligns with cost, but not necessarily, especially as generation becomes more distributed. And another important metric for us is engagement, customer engagement. Who is reading the messages? Like, what messages are they reading? What information are they accessing? What do they want to see? And that's a really huge piece for some of the customer segmentation work that we do. And finally, actually, and one of the most important ones as well are our equity metrics. We often, in a lot of our analytics, we bring in demographic data to kind of measure, as we're rolling out, or as our clients are rolling out new services and new programs, to ensure that they're being equitably distributed. Because legacy energy systems tend to be pretty inequitable, right? There's a lot of, especially in areas with a history of redlining and things like that's something we track, and we have an opportunity with the energy transition to really rebuild our energy system in an equitable manner. So we keep a very close eye on our equity metrics as well when we're running our analytics.
Speaking of, obviously, you're having customers' data, and you're using accessing demographics and things like that, and sensitive data to do with their energy usage and things like that. So how do you protect your customers with your privacy and
Absolutely, that's really important, especially with the level of granularity that is out there in terms of data. Like, your energy data is almost as unique as your fingerprint, and that's something we have to be very careful about. So we obviously work with multiple levels of compliance, and we have our own data security policies and internal regulations, but it's a lot of steps, making sure any personal data is like over here and protected, and then like any other data that you're using for your modeling is anonymized and like kept separate. And especially when it comes to artificial intelligence, machine learning modeling, having that data become anonymized is not only important for security, but is also important to avoid AI bias. Again, getting back to the equity question, like, we want to make sure that whatever new recommendations we're coming up with out of our machine learning models are not reflective of any bias that existed in the data going into them. So we have to make sure that data is as anonymized and clean and energy only as we can make it.
Perfect. So Peter, what are some of the biggest challenges that you faced when implementing energy analytics at Lowfoot, and how have you addressed them?
That's a good question. There have been a number of ones. I mean, first of all, like, data, it's what we do, but it's also one of our biggest challenges. Just the really the scale of data that we're dealing with, especially now. I mentioned 10 years ago it was all metered data, so you're talking about like maybe 24 readings a day, 24 data points a day, and now we're working with monitoring devices that have probably like 16, 20 channels of data in real time. We're pulling that in on like a 1 second lag. So it's a huge volume of data. And that's been our biggest challenge to, keep scaling and keep scaling. It's one of the things we work on the most. But our team has done some amazing work, making sure we're able to take that real time data and to turn it around really quickly into something usable. The other challenge is just access to data. Like, we used to have to, again, this is 10 years ago, we'd like go to individual utility websites, like pull down data for each user, and then it would take so much time, and then the utility would change the website, and then it would all break. And thankfully, we're far beyond that. And my development team is actually last year we completely rebuilt our data platform to be able to just take data from anywhere in any format at any granularity, and then again be able to turn it around quickly and be able to do something useful with it. And I'm so impressed at how well it works and how we're able to get data from anywhere, and it really makes the nightmare of 2011. We're going utility by utility. It seems like a bad dream from the past.
Oh yeah, I can only imagine AI is probably totally revolutionizing.
Oh man, it is. Yeah, it makes.
Like everywhere else.
It does. It makes some things a lot easier. But it requires a lot of monitoring as well to make sure, especially because when everything we have is going, back out to the customer. So we have to exercise a lot of caution around making sure. Yeah, it can really help. It can get you like 80% of the way there, but then that last 20% is like, okay, we need someone to check this to make sure that this is within our tolerance for what we're giving to the customer. Sure. Because the other challenge is building the customer experience because, for 40, 50, 100 years, people, like everyone has gotten the same bill, right? And everyone has had the same experience. And like, we're starting to get to a point where we're recognizing, different energy customers like have different needs and want different information. So a lot of the analytics we do are that segmentation to say like, here's the group that, wants a lot of data, right? And they want to see like their real-time data or their like really granular data. And they want like those detailed bill projections. And then over here's the customers that like don't want that. Like that's too much for them, right? So we're really had to be really careful and always kind of ongoing measurement of those engagement metrics I mentioned to see, what's working, what's not, and like how can we make sure we're providing a personalized and appropriate customer experience for every customer that's out there.
Can you give us a couple like success stories or case studies and how you've kind of helped improve the customer experience with Idea Analytics?
I can definitely tell you a couple of stories. We had one client who brought us on to help them achieve their conservation mandate. So, the government was like, you need to reduce consumption by this much, right? And they said, okay, we'll bring in Lowfoot. Lowfoot will engage our customers, and that will help reduce their usage. And it did do that. But what also happened was they all of a sudden noticed that they weren't getting as many calls to their call center anymore. And just because, well, people call about their bill, right? They get their bill and they're like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. Like, that's more than I was expecting. And I'm going to call and that something must be wrong. But because we are sending them these messages saying like, here's what your bill is going to be, and, by the time they get the bill, they're like, oh, I've been getting these weekly messages saying, here's what my bill is going to be. I know, here's my bill. It's what I expected. I'm not surprised. I'm not angry. I'm not going to call. So they saw, our client saw a 30% drop in customer calls from that alone, and especially going through like staffing crises of the last few years, like that was a real help to their department. And I mean, the nice thing about that too is that it really, utilities especially have. One thing they've been working on a lot is building customer trust. 30 years ago, they didn't have customers, they had ratepayers, right? It was like, you pay the rate, we provide the service, end of story, right? Yeah. And really now they're recognizing, like, these are customers, like we must provide customer service. And one thing that our products really try to do is help foster that trust. So you provide a good customer experience, you provide like a nice to have, right? Something that maybe the customer wasn't expecting, but they appreciate it. Now they're more willing to trust the utility, and when the utility comes to them saying, hey, we have this new program, right? Like we have a solar program, or we have like an EV program or some sort of program that, it would really help us out if you enrolled in it. Then the customer is much more likely to say, oh yeah, like, you've done some good stuff for me, so I'm going to help out. And we've actually seen this with our demand response programs. Again, this is where it's a hot day or a very cold day, and there's a lot of load on the grid, and the utility asks customers to reduce during a certain amount of time, right, to try and take some load off the grid, and everybody makes a small effort, and together it really helps. So we run these programs, both voluntary as well as through devices, and we found that customers who had been previously engaged through our other products were so much more likely to participate in demand response. And also, they were much more likely to take more off the grid. So there's this real, kind of virtuous circle where you reach out to these customers and you get them involved, and then they participate and they end up giving back. And the third story, I don't want to move on before we talk about equity again, but the client that saw the reduction in call center volume, the other thing they noticed was that among their low to moderate income population, LMI population, they noticed that the number of cutoffs from people not paying their bill were way down. And they're like, oh, and there's this is seniors on fixed incomes, or like students in rentals. And they're like, usually we have a real problem here, right? Usually a lot of people like don't pay their bill, or like because it's more than they expected, and we have to like really work hard to kind of engage collections and try and recoup that money.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, like, oh, these customers are being told, here's what your bill is going to be. And if you get that early on in your bill cycle, it's before you have a chance to make adjustments, right? And or engage with the utility before the bill actually arrives. So they saw about a 15% drop in cutoffs from just from engaging their customers and providing them with data and a good customer experience.
Very cool. So you're actually saving them money as well.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Like helping customer, but the end user, the vendor.
Yeah, it's shocking what a little bit of good information carefully placed can do.
Yeah. How do you work with the energy retailers and utilities to ensure that they have the necessary expertise and resources to effectively utilize your energy analytics?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it does tie a little bit back to what I was talking about earlier about how utilities have so much change already on their plate, and we do a lot of work to try and meet them where they are already. One example is there was a big winter storm in Texas a couple of years ago, Winter Storm Uri, and we have a lot of clients in Texas, and we did some analysis after the storm, basically analysis of the outage, which areas experienced outages, how long were they, how frequent were they, what was the weather, and then it was an interesting study. We used about 500,000 meters for this over about a 60-day period, and but one thing that really changed it was that we ended up bringing in that demographic data. So all of a sudden we were able to say like, okay, we can now do an equity study on the outages in your area, and which areas were hardest hit, and then what are the demographics of that area. And we were able to look and say like, okay, this utility did a very equitable job. All right, so like it was very spread out. The rotating outages were applied so that nobody suffered much more than anybody else. But another utility really struggled with that, and they had a lot of low-income folks experiencing much more prolonged outages. We're able to take that and kind of take that back to the utility and say, okay, here's your current restoration plan. Here's how you're currently restoring power, and now we can feed you an optimized plan that lets you restore power in a more equitable fashion. And again, you don't have to change what you're doing. You just have to basically take a new schedule in, and then we format that for them to be able to accept it however they're currently using it. So they don't have to change what they're doing, just how they're doing.
How do you stay up to date with the latest developments in energy analytics and do the best for your customers to make sure that they're getting the newest and best?
Yeah, that's a great question, because especially in the last 12 months, things have been moving so quickly. I mean, number one, we have a great group of clients, and we're in constant communication with them, and we're hearing about what they're seeing on the ground, and they bring us ideas and bring us their challenges. We have structurally within our team, we have like a separate research and development stream, which we call Lowfoot Labs, which is where we can take ideas that are maybe like half baked or a quarter baked and put them into the labs and like spend some time on them and see what happens. Thank you. Yeah, I like it. But really, I mean, what we've intentionally done with our software platform, and again, my team has just done an amazing job of this, is designed our platform to be able to be flexible and be agile and be able to change based on changing business requirements. Like for example, like we had a client come to us and say, we've had a significant uptick in solar customers over the last year, and we were expecting it. It's creating a lot of customer service problems for us, because what's happening with the customers are like, well, my solar installer told me this, but then here's what's actually happening, and can you help me? And they came to us and they said, can you put together something that will help us with this? And we looked at the data and we're like, that's a lot of data. But then we looked at our system and we're like, oh yeah, we can do this. Like we can put together some additional solar specific products for you to give to your customers to help answer these questions, and stop those calls to the call center, because we're trying to give those answers to the customers. And so, yeah, we're able to turn that around really quickly. I'm really proud of what my team has built to stay current and to let us stay on top of what's happening in the market.
Awesome. And I know you guys you've made so many more developments. You said since 2011, things have changed incredibly. So what do you see as the future of data analytics for customer experience?
Well, I mean, I think it all comes back to the energy transition. I think there's a number of aspects to this. I think first of all, like utilities and energy providers have to learn, run analysis on their customer base, on their data to see what are people doing, what are people using, right? Like how far ahead in the energy transition are some of your customers? And then, second of all, you have to grow that population, right? You have to kind of take that data and use that data to design the programs that are going to be needed to, get more solar installed, get more storage installed, manage the EVs that are, in your territory, and really kind of, because right now, all the prosumers have already adapted it. Now it's the other kind of 90% of the population that, needs to be kind of pulled in. And that's a big challenge, but this is where analytics can help. And then I think the third piece is, again, taking that 90% of the population and make sure you're really communicating appropriately and effectively to them in a way that says, here's what's happening. Here's a personalized version of what's happening. Here's how it impacts you. And, here's what it means. And, here's how we're going to tell you about it. And again, that messaging can be different for different populations. You have people who want to message every day. You have people who want to message once a month. But keeping people informed that things are changing and here's how is so important, especially when we start moving into the fourth part, which is automation, where again this is bringing back machine learning, where we start to look at concepts like load balancing. Right, being like, okay, we've got this set of storage batteries over here. We've got like these solar arrays over here and these EVs over here, and it's a hot day. People are running air conditioners. And how do we kind of borrow from a little bit of each to make sure that we don't have to turn the lights off, right? Or that we don't have to ask people to conserve. And can we do that in an automated way without impacting customers' comfort, but also while kind of letting customers know in an appropriate way that like, hey, this is happening. Right. And here's what it means. And like, here's what you get out of it. And then, of course, I think the fifth and most important part is that we're rebuilding the energy system and, using data analytics to make sure it's all done in an equitable fashion is a really important opportunity. And it's a really exciting time to be in energy, and it's an exciting time to be in energy data analytics. And I think it's going to be a huge piece of the future.
Awesome. That sounds super exciting, and I can't wait to see where you guys go with this.
Thank you.
Joining us, Peter. That was a great conversation. I really learned a lot about data energy analytics and importance of customer service. And how can people find Lowfoot and yourself?
Yeah, of course. We can find us at www.lowfoot.com. And I just want to say thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed the discussion.
And if you wish to learn more about Idea Theorem, visit our website at ideatheorem.com or find us on social media under Idea Theorem. And you can contact us for a free quote. Thank you so much and have a great day. Thanks again, Peter.
Thank you.